Good evening, everyone. I'm Judy, the YouTube lawyer, here with a last-minute live stream. Today, we're going to be discussing some breaking news that has just come out in the form of an article in the Wall Street Journal. This article is called Law School Loses Luster as Debts Mount and Salaries Stagnate. Recent graduates of the University of Miami School of Law who used federal loans borrowed a median of $163,000. So this is an ongoing problem that I feel like it's an issue that has gotten more and more attention over the last 10 to 15 years. And I think this is pretty timely because law school applications have been going up due to COVID. A lot of people graduated from college without jobs. A lot of people might have gotten laid off, or they're thinking about career changes because they don't want to be out and about and potentially exposed to COVID. So you get all these people who are applying to law school, but they really need to know about the chances of that paying off, especially if they're going to be taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans in order to pay for law school. So let's take a look at this article. Even though it's on the Wall Street Journal website, if you don't have a subscription, I don't know how, maybe there's some connection between these news outlets, but you can read the full article for free on this Fox Business website. So I'm going to share that with you. And for those of you out there watching live, thank you so much for being here. Hope you guys are doing well. So this is the way the article looks when you look on the foxbusiness.com website. And this is an article by Andrea Fuller, Josh Mitchell, and Sarah Randazzo. So it says, law school was once considered a surefire ticket to a comfortable life. Years of tuition increases have made it a fast way to get buried in debt. Recent graduates of the University of Miami School of Law who used federal loans borrowed a median of $163,000. 2 years later, half were earning $59,000 or less. That's the biggest gap between debt and earnings among the top 100 law schools as ranked by U.S. News & World Report, a Wall Street Journal analysis of federal data found. Graduates from a host of other well-regarded law schools routinely leave with six-figure student loans, then fail to find high-paying jobs as lawyers, according to the journal's analysis of the latest federal data on earnings for students who graduated in 2015 and 2016. So this article includes some really interesting quotes and information about some of these Miami Law School graduates. For example, this one guy who said that he started out making $45,000 as a public defender, which does sound pretty much in line with what I've heard. Usually, depending on what city you're in, most public defenders do start out making in the 40,000s or maybe in the low to mid 50,000s. Of course, if you're in a much bigger metropolitan city, you might make more than that, but you're definitely not going to get rich working for a public defender's office or district attorney's office or for most government positions. And even then, there is a huge percentage of people who wind up doing things like document review. And I do have an older video from last year that I made about document review hell. And that was based in part on my own relative's experience when she was doing document review, making $20 an hour. So I'll just hop over here and see if there are any comments. Yeah, thank you for being here. Appreciate anyone who's taking time out of their schedule to tune in on this. So, yeah, when you look at, if you actually have access to the Wall Street Journal article, there was a nice chart. I can't bring it up right now, but there is a chart where they tell you how much the tuition costs at a bunch of law schools has been versus what the median starting salary of their graduates are. And so it is pretty sad to see, a lot of kind of like average or respectable law schools where the ratio is just totally out of whack, where like say their students on average are in over $150,000 of debt at graduation, but then their earnings could be something really dismal like 50,000 or even less. So here, at least there is a professor at Miami Law School who was willing to be quoted in this article. Anthony Alfieri said that law schools foster this kind of cruel optimism in students, letting them think six-figure salaries are attainable, when in reality, those high-paying jobs are largely reserved for students at only the top-ranked law schools. So, it is possible, especially if you're not thinking of total big law, but maybe say like a moderately large regional law firm. Some of them might hire someone that's at the very top of the class at a lower ranked local law school. So there is that tiny smidgen of hope for people to be able to get jobs that will allow them to pay off their student loans in, say, like 5 years or less. But the chances of that happening are very low. And then this professor also says law schools encourage a kind of magical thinking in order to keep the lights on. And I think that is very true, because I went to Georgetown Law School myself. I never made a six-figure salary at all until after I became self-employed. So for the longest time, I was just stuck in these like smaller firm jobs that didn't pay especially well. And luckily, I had the great fortune of not having any law school debt, but it just would have been so difficult to pay back any student loans given how low my salary was. So let's see. And here's the truth that I have also covered in my other videos about, is law school tuition worth it? It says federal data suggests the value of a law degree from non-elite schools has diminished. And I would say even from some elite schools too. Salaries haven't kept pace with inflation over the past 20 years. Meanwhile, tuitions have soared. A 3-year JD program, including living expenses, now can cost more than $250,000 at private law schools. So this should be a sign that, at the risk of making some people mad and upset, and I know some people have gotten upset watching what I've said on YouTube, but if you can't even get into a public school where you are considered an in-state resident, then maybe you should take that as a sign that you should not go to law school. That doesn't mean that you should travel, far away to some low-ranked private law school and fork out even more money. Instead, it might be better to try to buckle down, study harder, try to get a better LSAT score or more experience, and try your hardest to get into some sort of public law school, because in-state tuition can often be so much cheaper. Also, especially if you plan on practicing in the same state where you're currently living, then it really makes sense to just stay in-state rather than, travel several states away and then hope that you can jump back into the job market back where you're from. So in terms of University of Miami, I always thought University of Miami was a good school. I just checked, and it looks like their ranking is like number 72 in the nation out of roughly 200 law schools in the country that are ABA accredited. And I've only known of maybe one person who graduated from there, and that person ended up doing document review and has worked for small law firms, probably not making a ton of money. And I don't really know of anybody else. It's probably better for someone that goes to a school like University of Miami to stick around in Florida. But in Florida, there also are a bunch of other law schools too, like I think University of Florida. There's several other schools like, is Florida International, maybe, or Berry, Florida State, Florida A&M. Yeah, feel free to jump in if you guys know of any other law schools that I forgot to mention that are located in Florida, because I'm not really familiar with those law schools. So I'll take a look at the comments here. Don't go to law school unless your parents can pay your full tuition up front. Please don't drown in debt. Well, I sort of agree with that, because I already felt screwed over by the law school industry, but yet I graduated with no debt because my parents were well off enough and they cared enough, or I shouldn't say they cared enough, but my parents were in a position to pay for all of my expenses. But then I come out of Georgetown not being in that coveted top 10%. So I wound up working for a small firm where my starting base salary was $22,500 with no benefits other than some lousy health insurance plan. So in today's dollars, that would probably be in the low 40,000s as a base salary. And then later on, the person cut me out of commissions because he got mad that I had to move. So I am definitely, I would err on the side of caution. Don't take out, say, more than $50,000 of debt to go to law school. But obviously, if the person can get into a very top law school, like top 6 law school, then it might make sense if you intend to practice big law. Then it might make sense to take out, say, like $100,000 or $150,000 of debt if you get into Harvard or Yale or Stanford or UPenn. So I think UPenn was one of the schools that did have like one of the best outcomes. Doesn't sound like lawyers to me. Yeah, so totally. Because the problem is, if you look at the raw numbers and then you see like how much has law school tuition zoomed up in the last 20 years, like the wages have not kept pace. Like maybe like the starting salary for someone even at a big law firm has gone up about 25%, but yet during that same time period, the law school tuition has jumped up more than 200%. So it does seem like things are unfair, but if you don't come from a well-off family and you don't get into the very top law schools, then it probably isn't going to be worthwhile to, be drowning in debt, over $200,000 or $300,000 of debt just to go to a low-ranked law school and then possibly have no job to show for it or not be able to pass the bar exam. Hi, Shane. Thank you for being here. Would it be interesting to compare a lifetime income of lawyers versus police officers when police get a pension after 20 years at 70% of their highest salary and no grad school debt necessary? Yeah. Well, but then again, police officers really do have stressful jobs where they could get, killed or assaulted any day, every day. So on the other hand, I think I'd prefer to have my nice desk job where I have a pretty sedentary and safe job unless some crazy angry, pro se opposing party tries to come and assault me or something. Yeah. But that definitely would be interesting because I have a relative by marriage who actually works for the federal government and law enforcement, and he did not actually get a college degree, although he did go to college. So, but he makes more money than I do. I mean, he has really worked his way up through the federal government. And when he retires in a couple of years at a relatively young, healthy stage of life, he's still going to get some pension. I'm not really sure how much it is, but I think it's really good. It's probably like, I'm guessing like maybe 75 to 80% of what his salary is, or maybe the average of his salary over X number of years. I mean, of course, I'm not going to directly ask him, hey, how much pension are you going to get? But I have no pension whatsoever. And, my family spent tons more money on my college plus 3 years of law school plus bar exam, all the costs associated with going to law school, whereas my relative who didn't even get a college degree just worked his way up through the federal government, and he's pretty much set for life. Like, he doesn't have to work anymore if he doesn't want to. So whereas for myself and a lot of other attorneys, whether you're solo or you work for a firm, you're on your own for saving for your retirement. There's no pension out there at all. I think a lot of government attorneys don't even have pensions anymore either. Yeah, student loans cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. Yeah, there was somebody that commented on one of my other videos and said, oh, well, actually, student loans could potentially be discharged in bankruptcy under hardship or something, but I think it's pretty unlikely, though. I mean, I don't practice bankruptcy, but what I had always heard was that, these like private loans will follow you until you die, and That's why sometimes people were talking on JD Underground about running off to another country or teaching English in Thailand or someplace where they could escape their student loans and live a somewhat decent life. The average solo practice attorney. Well, this was a number of years ago. I would say probably like more than 10 years or so ago. But I had read that the IRS or somewhere, like they said that the average solo practitioner reported on their tax returns only making about $48,000 on average. So, I mean, it just really, really depends, because there are some solo attorneys that are doing great. They're totally killing it. They're loving life. They have a great practice, and maybe they have like a legion of paralegals and other people doing all the work while they sit back and just pick and choose whatever cases they want. But it does turn out, though, that a lot of the successful solo practitioners that I know are people who are older, so they were able to go to law school when law school tuition was probably no more than like $10,000 a year or less, and a lot of them came from rich families. Because once in a blue moon, I'll run into some solo practitioner who, just started their own practice or started a firm with one other person soon after law school. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, this person probably came from a rich family. I mean, how else are they going to be able to, take on these cases and have the connections and stuff? So it really depends. I mean, on the other hand, I do have some attorneys that I'm friendly with, or that I was friends with, or they confided in me that they only made like, less than $25,000 one year, or they made less than $60,000 one year. And, it's just really hard to say. It's sort of like asking, how much people who own restaurants make. You could be rolling in the dough, or you could be just like scraping by and having to do other odd jobs to try to make a living. Yeah, registered nursing is a better career. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a shortage of nurses now. Yeah, I mean, being a nurse is really a tough job, but there are so many nurses that went to community college and then they get their nursing degree, or they go to a 4-year program. I know there are certain nurses, like nurses specialize in anesthesiology. I think they can make over $100,000 or $150,000 a year. I've come across a nurse practitioner who made more than $200,000 a year. So there are definitely, plenty of people with nursing degrees that hardly have any student debt or no student debt, but then they come out making far more money and having a lot more employment options than someone that might have graduated from an above average law school. Yeah. Oh, FIU. Yes. And FSU law school. Yeah. Thank you, Rudy. Thanks. That's nice to know. Yeah, thanks for your streams. Very informative, especially the last one with Professor Tamanaha. Yeah, I really enjoyed speaking with him. I mean, it's so great to be able to kind of like reach out to other people, especially people who are like experts or esteemed academics or, well-respected attorneys and stuff, and just kind of like bring out more information to everybody. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy doing YouTube, is being able to sort of virtually meet with people and exchange ideas and information and put it out there for anyone that might be interested. Yeah. So getting back to this article here, let me scroll on through. Yeah. So graduates who finished law school in 2019 earned a median of $72,500 the following year, according to NALP, National Association for Law Placement. That's about the same as graduates who finished a school a decade earlier earned soon after graduating. Wow. Yeah. So definitely the salaries have not kept pace with all the years passing and the tuition going up exponentially. It says, even at some of the most prestigious law schools, those in the U.S. News Top 30, students are borrowing far more than they will earn soon after graduation, including at George Washington University and Emory University. At lower-ranked but still competitive American University, graduates borrowed a median $175,000, nearly triple their median earnings after 2 years. Yeah. Um, George Washington's dean said many of the college's alumni enter government and public interest jobs, which pay less than private firms. American University and Emory declined to comment. Yeah, so, I mean, as someone that went to law school in the DC area, I mean, American University was always seen, at least back when I was there, as like not as good as Georgetown and GW, then maybe AU. And back then, George Mason was also kind of like a bottom ranked law school, but I know it's totally jumped up in the rankings over the last, say, 15 years. And then there's Catholic and UDC Law School also in the area. And as for Emory, I'm a little familiar with Emory Law School because I grew up around Atlanta, and a lot of smart people from my high school ended up going to Emory University either for undergrad or grad school or medical school. And recently I was just being nosy and looking around on some of those Reddit law students or law school forums. And somebody who was a law student at Emory Law School posted and said that the students were all angry because they felt like career services wasn't doing enough to help them find jobs. And, a lot of the students there were kind of bummed out about the difficulty of finding jobs. So that's just what somebody who's actually there at Emory Law School right now said. And Emory, I'm not sure how much it is, but most of these private law schools cost at least $50,000 to even closer to $70,000 a year for tuition. Georgetown is in the upper 60s, probably around 67 or 68,000 a year. And then I just checked University of Miami Law School tuition, which is a little over 57,000 a year. And that doesn't even include the cost of the books. The textbooks are very expensive, so that could be a few more $1,000 a year. And then also, when you graduate, most of the time people do take these bar review prep classes, which are almost required if you really want to have a good chance of passing the bar exam. And that's going to cost at least an extra $5,000 plus dollars, plus the fact that when you're studying for the bar exam, it's usually a bad idea to be working full time. A lot of people do take time off right after graduation to study and take the bar review class for, say, like 2 or 3 months. So you still need money to pay for your living expenses during that time too. So people also have to realize that when you're taking out these loans, there's still interest accruing too. So even if it seems like, oh, no big deal, I'll just work at a big firm for 2 or 3 years and I'll pay off my student loans. Well, there's still interest accruing. And nobody's guaranteed a big law firm job at all. So let's see. So there's a recent graduate. I mean, this is pretty brave of these University of Miami Law School graduates to be willing to be interviewed for this kind of big article that has nationwide publication, dissemination. So this person, Laura Cordell, 2019 graduate, said she chose Miami for the prestige, particularly within Florida. You go to any courthouse in Miami and the judge went to UM, the judge is a teacher at UM, there's some sort of connection to UM, she said. When I was looking for law schools, I wasn't looking at the price as much as what would be good for my career, said Ms. Cordell, 30 years old, who said she turned down another school that offered her a large scholarship. I didn't have an understanding of the gravity of the amount I was borrowing. So it says she owes $334,000 in federal loans for University of Miami. She now makes a $80,000 base salary with a bonus of about $12,000, which sounds good, but then you see how much debt she has. Working at a firm that specializes in insurance. Because her debt load is so high, she can't afford more than the minimum payment on an income-driven plan, which sets her monthly payments according to her income. So that's just insane. But I mean, I can understand what she said too. I mean, because sometimes people say like, well, that's their fault. Nobody told them to take out all those loans. They should have known what they were getting into. But I mean, there was also this lawsuit quite a while ago, probably I would say about like a dozen or so years ago. There was a lawsuit where a female law graduate from Thomas Jefferson Law School sued the school, saying that the school had misled everybody about their employment likelihood of finding employment after graduation. The employment stats were all doctored up and stuff. So she sued them for fraud because she couldn't find any job even after passing the California bar exam on her first try. So the court ended up throwing out her lawsuit and ruling in favor of the law school and said that you law school students or applicants are sophisticated consumers and you guys should have known better and you could have done your own research. There's no fraud here. So, but just think back, like if any of you guys are like middle-aged or older, like I am, I mean, just thinking back when I was in my early 20s, just straight out of college or about to graduate from college and thinking about, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to law school. It sounds like such a great idea. What a prestigious profession. I'm going to make good money. I'm going to be able to find good jobs. So I really didn't understand much in terms of finances. I mean, I did read some personal finance books on my own and some like Money magazine and stuff. But in terms of budgeting and realizing anything about like how onerous student loans could be, I didn't understand that because my parents just paid for what I needed. So, that's why going into law school, I was kind of scattered in terms of what my focus was. Like, by the time I was graduating, I just wanted any job. Like I was happy with anything. It's like criminal law, civil litigation, family law, business law, whatever. I just wanted a job. And it wasn't until later when, I was seeing how little money I was bringing in and my parents weren't giving me money anymore, then I realized, okay, so this kind of sucks, when a small smidgen of people manage to get these great high paying jobs and the rest of us are sent, scrambling for scraps, just trying to get these like low paying jobs that pay less than what, people with just a bachelor's degree or less are making. So, yeah, I mean, this woman, 30 years old, says she didn't understand the gravity of the amount she was borrowing because, people going into law school are often rosy-eyed and thinking that, of course, I'm going to be making, come out making $200,000 a year, and every year I'm just going to keep making more and more, and then I'm going to make partner at the law firm, So, I mean, if you're thinking about it in that way, then maybe taking over $300,000 of debt doesn't seem too awful. But when you graduate, that's when reality hits, especially if you can't get a high-paying job or you can't pass a bar exam or you can't do anything other than document review. Yeah. So law schools are modern. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, definitely. They're selling unicorns. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are some unicorns. There are some people that do great and get the high-paying jobs and are full of prestige, but the vast majority of people aren't going to be getting those types of jobs. A lot of attorneys near me went to this law school. Oh, Nova University. It's not ranked, but a lot are firm owners making a lot of money. Okay. Yeah, so is it Nova or is it Novus? Yeah, because Novus is like an online law school, but I don't know where is Nova University because I've never heard of it. Yeah, and if you look at like the attorneys, firm owners making a lot of money, you also have to think like, well, are they people who graduated from law school like 30 years ago? So of course, times were totally different 30 years ago where the market wasn't as saturated and they probably were able to get good jobs out of law school to get the experience to learn how to manage a law firm and run a business and everything and build their reputations. So things are going to be a lot different for people who are just graduating within the last few years versus someone that graduated, say, like 25 years ago. Yeah. So, yeah, third tier toilet. Yeah, I definitely heard that a lot on JD Underground. Law schools are taking advantage of slackers who have no business in grad schools. Yeah, except you can't call them slackers or, yeah, people will get insulted, right? Because law should be for everybody, right? Everybody should be able to go to law school. Oh, Nova in Florida. Okay. Yeah, because I never heard of Nova in Florida. But I mean, from what I've heard more recently on a lot of discussion forums is that there are tons and tons of lawyers in Florida and too many law schools. And there are a lot of like unemployed or underemployed JDs in Florida also. Yeah. Yeah, old for sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the older attorneys definitely, um, were at an advantage because the market wasn't like a totally glutted and they didn't have to pay, so much money or get into so much debt in order to get their law degrees. Yeah. So let's get back to this article and scroll down a little bit. Yeah. So they're talking about, all these people saddled with debt. Um, Ms. White said Miami raised tuition to cover the school's higher expenses, including salaries and financial contributions the law school was expected to make to the broader university. This year, the University of Miami asked Ms. White's successor as dean to step down, citing in a public statement the need for new leadership amid its current fundraising campaign. Okay, between 1985 to 2019, the average annual tuition at private law schools nearly tripled to $49,000, adjusted for inflation. Yeah. Law school attendance plummeted after the recession as law firms laid off junior lawyers and other entry-level job openings constricted. Though enrollment began to rebound in 2018, fewer students are choosing law school than a decade ago, according to American Bar Association data. Yeah. Ms. White said Miami urged students to borrow less for living expenses, but that students tend to be unsophisticated borrowers, with many taking out the maximum every year. They don't know how to manage money in large numbers, she said, and so over a relatively small period of time, borrowing got out of control. Starting lawyer salaries generally fall into two clusters, 45 to 75K for public service and small firm attorneys, and around 190,000 for large firm jobs, according to data from National Association for Law Placement. Yep, that's definitely true. More experienced associates at large law firms can earn upward of 250K, far more than their peers at small firms or in the public sector, but more than half of entry-level jobs at high-paying firms have gone to graduates of just top 20 ranked schools, according to an analysis of the ABA data. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's a very prestige-driven profession, and the best firms that pay the top dollars are not even going to be recruiting from certain law schools that are lower ranked. Okay. So Kyle McEntee, who co-founded Law School Transparency, said many people borrow too much because they want to attend schools that are prestigious, and they think any debt taken out for higher education is worthwhile. And that's just not true, he said. Yep, I totally agree. University of Miami advertises the law school as an academically renowned experience in a tropical paradise setting, including proximity to 20 beaches. It prepares students to enter the legal marketplace running and ready to take their career to where they want it to go, said Osamudia James, then a professor at Miami, in a YouTube video posted in 2019 to the law school's account. Ms. James declined to comment. Yeah, so this kind of reminds me of Charleston School of Law, which I mentioned in another live stream from, I guess, like last December, where I know someone that actually taught briefly at Charleston School of Law, but it's kind of similar because people want to go to these like fun touristy cities and think it's exciting, and either their parents are paying for it or they've got all these like student loans that will help pay for them to spend 3 years in this like fun city near the ocean. And it just seems like a great place to be while you're doing something that seems very worthwhile, which is going to law school, without taking into account the fact that you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars, and then you might not be able to even get a decent job when you graduate. Yeah. So, it says Ms. Menendez, the spokeswoman, said the school has graduated some of the most successful attorneys in Florida and around the country. Miami includes data on graduate salaries and job prospects on its website. Mr. Boygris, the 2016 Miami graduate, said he didn't receive counseling about what borrowing roughly $240,000 would mean for his financial future. He now owes nearly $300,000, including interest and undergraduate debt. Wow. That sounds terrible. You tell them, I need assistance. And they're like, okay, here's a loan, said Mr. Borgris, who is 30. It was just an endless supply of money. In February, he was surprised to learn that he and his fiancée couldn't get approved to borrow as much as they wanted to buy a home, though Mr. Boygris was making $120,000 after moving to the private sector. The lender told him his debt load was too high. Ms. Menendez said admitted Miami students receive information on costs and loan options, and that admissions officers provide one-on-one counseling to address financial questions. The dean of students advises current students on financial planning resources, she said. And in recent years, Miami has hosted programs on student loans and financial literacy. Okay, so they've made progress in reducing debt. Supposedly, median law school debt in 2017 and 2018 declined 6% from 2 years earlier. So, and then they mentioned another student named Maria Rodriguez started at Miami in 2016. She and her mother visited the law school to discuss their concerns about affordability. The student had immigrated from Colombia as a child and grew up in a low-income family. She needed to buy books totaling about $1,000, she said, but her student loan money wasn't yet available. A school official told her there were no need-based scholarships available for her and suggested she consider getting a credit card to buy the books, she recalls, and now she's 27. She didn't blame the school for the timing of when loans were processed. She ultimately found a bookstore that gave her the books up front after she promised to make good when her loans came through. Yeah, so my commentary on that is that, you know, she's an immigrant from Colombia. And I think a lot of these law schools kind of prey on immigrants or people who are the first to go to law school or even college from their families, because most of them don't know as much or have the connections or people to tell them the reality of the legal job market or how, you know, hierarchical the legal profession is. And you know, in a way that kind of applied to me too, because I came from a family of immigrants. I was born in the US, but my parents came from Taiwan. And so they and their friends, you know, like nobody was a lawyer. We didn't have any lawyer friends in the family. There was no one that I could talk to or look to as a mentor. And so I didn't really know much about how the legal profession or the job market is structured or how to even get a legal job or you know, like what were the chances of getting a great job after graduating? So we just kind of assumed that, okay, well, I got into Georgetown, that's a high ranked school, therefore I am going to come out and have lots of job offers and make great money. So similarly, you know, this person mentioned Maria Rodriguez. You know, I'm sure she and her family just thought, well, education is the key to success in America. So she got into University of Miami, yay, you know, everything's going to be great. So here, she talks about how now she owes $300,000 in loans for her law and bachelor's degrees. She works as a public defender, is enrolled in an income-based repayment plan, and expects to have her loans wiped away through a federal public service loan forgiveness program after paying for a decade. So yeah, I mean, that's great. At least she passed a bar and she got a job as a public defender. But you know, as we mentioned earlier, public defenders usually get paid like starting in the 40,000s or the 50,000s. It's a really tough, grueling, and very stressful job. But, you know, she can't quit because that's her way of someday having hope of getting her loans taken care of. So she has to stick with that job or some other sort of like public service or public interest job. So anyway, then they mention another person who is also an immigrant. So Zikan Danklu is a 2018 Miami law graduate who is now 38 years old and immigrated from Togo in West Africa and is a Navy veteran. He said that they met with Ms. White. I guess Ms. White was a dean or somebody that worked for the school. She tried to encourage us to hang in there, that once you graduate, things are going to get better because we're going to be lawyers and we're going to be making a decent living, recalled Mr. Denklu. She didn't make it sound like it was guaranteed, but she did give us hope. Mr. Denklu said the dean was very nice and gave the students pizza. Wow, really generous. But apart from that, I don't recall any help being offered, he said. Ms. White said she frequently held meetings with students and served them pizza, but she didn't recall that gathering. She said she never would have told students they could expect to earn high salaries after school and that she often advised them to limit how much student debt they took on. Well, you know, they really should have been mentioning this, but of course they're not going to mention this to prospective applicants because they want them to come on in and bring those student loan dollars. Mr. Denklu said he asked a friend to buy his books, promising to repay him when the loans came through. His landlord was understanding that he would be late on his rent, he said, and he borrowed $20 here and there from friends for food. Even with a partial scholarship, he borrowed $138K. He struggled to find a permanent job after graduating. Wow, that's really sad. And plus, he's like 38 years old. So, I've mentioned this before, but there definitely is some age discrimination in hiring too, that some of the firms and the employers, they don't want to hire older law graduates because they just, the stereotype is that the older person isn't going to work as hard or probably has family or kids and isn't going to be able to work past 5:30 or 6 at night. And they want young people who are willing to put up with all the crap and all the hard work and working on weekends or whatever. So that's why it's even harder if you graduate and you're like in your 30s by the time you graduate from law school. So it says here, after a brief stint working for the federal government, he's begun working as a solo practitioner in Jacksonville. He currently has zero income, but hopes to make money from cases taken on a contingency basis. His student loan balance with interest has risen to $155K. Wow. Okay, poor guy. Yeah, so I did kind of wonder then, why did he wind up being a solo practitioner? Maybe he only had a contract job, or who knows what happened with that other job that he got, because working for the federal government sounds a lot better than being a solo practitioner making zero income. Yeah, so I'll head on over here. Oh, it's already been 41 minutes. I'm sorry, I'm just too talkative. I wanted to go over this like law professor's response, but I don't think there's going to be time for that. So let me scroll back up and check everybody's comments. Thank you guys so much for being here. Okay, so at what rate is law school worth it? Full ride scholarship or half? Well, it just really depends, because the lower ranked the law school, then I think the more important it is to get a full ride scholarship. So let's say you get a full ride scholarship to like, bottom tier, like fourth tier or third tier law school, then maybe that would be more worth it compared to, say, getting like a no scholarship to like a second tier law school. So again, it really depends on how highly ranked your law school is. Yeah. So yeah, also depends on, do you want to stay in the city or in the area where that law school is located, and do you plan on practicing there? Yeah, because as this one person that I know found out, coming to North Carolina with a degree from University of Miami just was not anything alluring to most legal employers. Like, most employers are not that familiar here with University of Miami or other, average law schools from other states far away. So, yeah, so I would definitely, first look at, is the school even ranked well? And do you plan on practicing around the area? Of course, unless it's like Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and what was I going to say? Duke, UPenn, those very top tier schools might be worth it. But of course, that's if you have to pay full price for it and you also intend to work for a big law firm and you think you can succeed at that. Yeah. The best law firms peel from the top. The remaining graduates are left to the mercy of the marketplace. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I did want to mention, well, since I don't think I'm going to have time to go over Professor Michael Simkovic, is that his name? Simkovic. Yeah. There's this professor from the University of Southern California, USC Law School, who wrote a quick response to that Wall Street Journal article. And he's a graduate of Harvard Law School, went to Duke for undergrad. Sounds like he's a really, academically brilliant person. But then I looked at his resume that's on the USC Law School website, and it looks like he only worked for a law firm for 1 year, like a very prestigious big firm, probably around New York or some other major metropolitan city. So he worked for 1 year as a lawyer and then decided to to leave so that he could go into academia. So you see a lot of that. That's the way most tenured or tenure track law professors are, because my ex-husband is also a law professor, so I'm pretty familiar with that career path. And so, I mean, shouldn't that make people think that if these are the cream of the crop law school students, the smartest, most academically talented, gifted law school students who graduated from schools like Harvard and Yale, and most of them only worked at big law firms for maybe 1 year or 2 years before jumping ship and leaving so that they can become law professors. Well, that kind of goes to show, how miserable or how, working in a big law firm really isn't like such a wonderful thing. Most people I know who did that hated it, or they knew they weren't going to be partnership material, and they couldn't stand the long hours and the people that they might have had to work under. So anyway, just another thing to throw out there. Since I'm in South Florida, University of Miami is sort of known as being sort of like spoiled kids college for undergraduate, at least. Yeah, I sort of got that feeling too. Yeah, it isn't hard to get into and expensive, so it attracts more spoiled students. Yeah. Exactly. But I mean, then it's kind of like they're in for a rude awakening if they're going to spend so much money or spend so much of their parents' money going to law school there, because once you get into the legal field and you're working for a law firm or any sort of legal employer, they're not going to put up with a bunch of spoiled brats. You have to do the grunt work. You have to do, boring things or deal with a lot of difficult people. Or if you work for like smaller law firms or work in a DA's office or public defender office, you're going to run into a lot of, kind of stranger, low-class people. So being a spoiled, pampered kid at University of Miami is not really going to help people prepare for those types of legal jobs. Yeah, just stereotypes there. I'm sorry. Hopefully I didn't offend too many people who might have gone to University of Miami. So leave a comment and tell us if that stereotype is true. Is there a list online of all top tier or T14 law schools? Yeah, there is. There's actually, there's like the US News and World Report rankings is available online. And then there's also that website, irlg.com, that also has their own rankings, which are pretty similar here. So I just Googled US News law school rankings, and then it showed up. So you should be able to find it pretty quickly just through Google. And let me try to share that screen so you guys can see it. Okay. Yeah, so you can see that, right? So let's see here, because some of my knowledge is out of date. I think I might have accidentally offended the professor when I thought that Washington University St. Louis Law School was ranked in the 20s, but apparently it has jumped up further in the rankings and is now ranked number 16 in the whole country. Yeah, but granted, the valedictorian of my high school went to Washington University Law School, and I think he was not able to find a real legal job, and last I heard was working in a police department, but that was a while ago. So let's see. So US News is now saying that Yale is number 1, Stanford number 2, Harvard number 3, then comes Columbia, University of Chicago, NYU, UPenn, UVA, UC Berkeley. That's where I went for undergrad, but I didn't get in for law school. Duke University. Okay, so that's number 10. And then number 10, also tied for number 10, is University of Michigan, then Northwestern, Cornell, UCLA, and then Georgetown, number 15, which is where I went, UT Austin, Vanderbilt, Washington University in St. Louis, USC, BU. Okay, yeah. So you guys can just Google that and find out yourself, what this US News and World Report ranking is. Yeah. So, if you wanted to see the professor's response to the Wall Street Journal article, I think he's basically saying that the job market really isn't as bad as it used to be. And I don't know. I just kind of like skimmed over his article there, but it's on this other law professor's blog. And I'll just flash it up on the screen for someone that really wants to look into that. Brian Leiter's Law School Reports. So his blog is called leiterlawschool.typepad.com. And here it says Wall Street Journal blames law schools for COVID economy. So he's just basically saying that, things aren't as bad as what that Wall Street Journal article makes it out to be, that, the job market has just been like temporarily affected. But anyway, yeah, I'm not going to spend another hour reading through this whole article there. So there are two sides to every story. And of course, there are some people that are going to be like, well, those people should have known better. They should have done their homework. Not everybody needs to take $300,000 of student loan debt out to go to law school. You can go to law school cheaply. Yeah, which I totally agree with. I mean, there is no reason to take out more than, say, like $150,000 or over $200,000 in student loans to go to law school these days. And even if it's for a school like Stanford, that may or may not pay off either. Yeah, so why trap yourself and ruin your life when you're only in your early to mid 20s like that? That's just a terrible decision. Yeah, thank you so much. Debt Free Dad is a lawyer also. He graduated from NC Central Law School and works for the federal government. So please check out his channel there. Yeah, nepotism and cronyism. Yeah, I mean, that's also the way that the legal profession operates too. A lot of times I just kept applying and applying for jobs with the North Carolina Department of Justice, and there were jobs that I felt very qualified for. I thought for sure I would at least get an interview, but I just couldn't even get an interview for any of those jobs. And I must have applied for at least 3 to 5 different positions over many years before I started my own private practice. But sometimes I do feel like certain jobs, they already have someone in mind that they want to hire, like a friend of theirs. And so they're just posting the job because they have to make it look fair. But nobody really has a good chance of just coming out of the blue, not knowing anyone and getting the job. Yeah. And only 2% of PSLF applications are approved. Terrible. Oh, okay. I had no idea it was that low. That is terrible, because I think some law schools try to sell students on this too by saying, oh, well, if you're really interested in public interest jobs, or you want to work in whatever, human rights law, or you want to help immigrants, or whatever, some sort of like feel good, bleeding heart liberal cause, they say, well, sure, you can do that, because there's this like public service loan forgiveness program. And I really don't know too much about it, but I had no idea only 2% of the applications were approved. Yeah, that's sad. Yeah, and I do hear that, like from Larita Baskerville's YouTube channel, she's also an attorney, saying that you have to be on top of all the paperwork and make sure that you follow all the rules, because otherwise your loans might not get forgiven. Yeah. Hi, Angel. Angel is a graduate student at UC Davis. So thank you for being here also. I'm sure you know about student loans and student loan debt and the cost of higher education. Yeah, damn terrible. Yeah. Lots of laughter. Big law or sweatshops. Yes, that is so true. That's why, like, most people I know just left within a year or two. Like my ex-husband quit after a year. Like, he felt like he was doing nothing of value there, even though he was getting paid great. And some of my good friends also, only worked for big law firms for a couple of years before being told that they weren't going to make partner, or they were fired or laid off from there. So even getting a big law job is not really like stuff to cheer for. Although there are a few people, like, they're all men though, there's like a few male, college or law school classmates of mine that I looked up, and it turns out that they are partners at pretty big law firms around Los Angeles or California or in New York. But I don't even think that they have kids, or they're not married, or some of them are divorced already. And there was one guy that I had worked with one summer in San Diego for a bigger law firm. And I had to call him up one time because, just out of coincidence, there was someone applying for my job at another law firm that had put this guy down as a reference. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'll call up this guy, Eric. I wonder if he still remembers me from when I worked at his firm one summer in California. And he couldn't even talk to me for more than like half a minute straight, he just kept getting interrupted over and over again because he was working for a huge law firm in Los Angeles and he had not a moment to spare. So I would just start talking to him a little bit, trying to get him as a reference for this applicant. And he would be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta go. I'll call you back. I'll call you back in 2 hours." And then he would call me back, and then something else would get interrupted. So it just seemed like his schedule was totally crazy. Like he had no control of what he wanted to do at the moment because, when you work for a big law firm, there's like tons and tons of work to do and deadlines and people, hassling you, and they're paying you a lot of money. So you better jump when they say jump. And if you want to be on vacation or even meet up with friends, you might have to be ready to cancel those plans because the client or something came up with one of your cases. Yeah, so big law is not really like the dream job that some people make it out to be. Hey, Judy, this is a very interesting topic. It seems as though tuition across all industries has increased exponentially over the last few years. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, like even, what is it? Like medical school costs $70,000 a year now. And a lot of times there aren't that many public medical schools. So, or even pharmacy schools, right? Because I have a good friend who went to pharmacy school around Philadelphia, I think, and had a lot of debt from there. Yeah, it's just gotten really, really expensive. I mean, I'm all for people going to public schools these days. I read one the other day about Masters of Arts students graduating owing $300K in debt from Columbia. Yeah, but in that case, it's kind of like, well, you should have known anyway. I mean, what does a Masters of Arts really get you in terms of like pay or job options or something? But on the other hand, a large percentage of people in the country still think that going to law school is great, and they don't understand that, if you go to a bottom rung law school, then your job options are going to be a lot less, or you might not even be able to get a job when you graduate. Yeah. So yeah, it just seems like it's only people from the upper crust, privileged class that can afford to send their kid to get a master's degree in art or even, go to some of these law schools. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Also, Buffy McMuffin is a retired attorney, I think in California, right? Yeah. So, but I think you also mentioned that you already paid off your law school debt. So congratulations on that. That's great. Yeah. The average billable hour requirement is 2,200 hours. Yeah, it used to be like 2,000 hours, but has it gone up to 2,200 hours a year? That's crazy. That doesn't count office time either. I can't what the salary is. I'd feel like a Pavlov dog. Okay. Well, yeah, either way, when you boil it down to, how much money are you really making per hour if you have to work past 10 o'clock every night and then work like most of the time on the weekends too? Yeah. So no wonder most people just leave or they can't handle it anymore after a year or two. Yeah. Hi, Euphoric Soul. Thank you for being here also. Pharmacy school cost 20 to 30K total in the early 2000s. Now it's increased to a total of 200K. Wow, really? And up to 350K for private. Wow, I had no idea because I have a cousin who went to Rutgers for undergrad as well as pharmacy school, and she's gotten a really good job working for Novartis, somewhere around New Jersey, I think, or Pennsylvania. Yeah, but I mean, we never really talked too much about, how much it cost her to go to pharmacy school, or she probably paid off her loans by now. Yeah, but I have heard that pharmacy has gotten a little saturated also, that especially the private schools might not be worth going to. Yeah, I had a friend who worked at Skadden. He hated life. He had pneumonia and his bosses told him, "So your computer still works, right?" Yeah, I've heard these like horror stories of where, someone had to go to the hospital, or someone like was ready to give birth, or somebody's like grandfather was dying, or some relative was like deathly ill in the hospital, but yet, the partner is still like calling the person or saying, "Hey, did you do this? Or can you still get this stuff done?" Yeah, that's just the way they are. I mean, it's a certain personality that can survive at those types of law firms. Yeah, really workaholic type people. Was your colleague who couldn't talk on the phone for over half a minute a graduate of a tier 1 law school learning about the yeah, where did he go? Yeah, let me look him up real fast, but I'm not going to obviously show his profile or anything because I don't want to embarrass him. Um, why do I feel like he went to like University of some UC school, maybe UC Hastings or oh wow, he is now partner at this other law firm around Los Angeles. So where did he go? Isn't it weird how like some law firm websites don't put people. Oh yeah, okay. So he did graduate from UC Hastings, which is where I went for a couple of months before I dropped out because they wanted me to pay out of state tuition. So he went to Hastings College of Law, cum laude, and he went to UC San Diego undergrad, cum laude also. Okay, so really smart guy. Yeah, so he's still in big law. He made partner. That's great. I don't know anything about his personal life though. Yeah. So yeah, he really did not have a minute to spare to even talk to me as to give a reference to this person. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Oh, I don't care. Sorry. I don't get these like abbreviations and stuff. Yeah. So, anyway, that's just like in a nutshell what's been like buzzing thanks to this Wall Street Journal article about um, law schools losing their luster. And this is very important. I'm glad that this stuff is getting out there in the mainstream media. I mean, it has been sort of, a little bit like over the last 10 to 15 years, but this is definitely an article that people applying or thinking about going to law school really should look at. And like people even graduating from like average to pretty good law schools are having difficulty paying back their loans or finding jobs that pay well or finding jobs in general. Yeah. Yes, one of my first jobs was at a place where an associate was sitting by his dying father in the hospital, and the partner told him he could still work while in the hospital room. That lawyer quit. Yeah, that's just really heartless. Yeah, I mean, for them, it's all about the money and retaining the clients and billing and stuff. And so after a while, a lot of people are, especially now with COVID happening and people thinking about their mortality, they're like, yeah, screw that. I'm not going to be doing all this work. What's the point of sacrificing my life and my time with my family and my personal life, just so that I can make more money or make partner or, appease this client and stuff. Yeah. So anyway, I guess I will end it from here. So hopefully this information was helpful to some people. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop me any questions in the comments. The next live stream, I think I'll probably do it on Friday evening, is going to be about family law because I think it was Christy that was asking, like, when are you going to do a live stream about family law? So might as well kind of make it kind of interesting and say, I will tell you guys the truths about practicing family law. So if you have any specific questions, then also please leave a comment and I'd be glad to sort of, to a certain degree, spill the beans about, what it's like being a family lawyer. So thank you, Debt Free Dad. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks, Christy. I appreciate you also being here. And Euphoric Soul, thanks for always being so supportive. Hope you guys have a good night then. Enjoy the rest of the week, what's left of it.